Hello Glee, I'm Thomas Broadbent, your second grandfather. Here's what I'd like you to remember about me. I was born in Saddleworth, England in 1830. My mother was Nanny Broadbent. She was single, age 36, and was living at her parents' home. My father was James Ridley, the local flower shop proprietor. When I was about 15, the missionaries brought the gospel of Jesus Christ to me. I was baptized a member of the LDS Church. My friends were not supportive and treated me like an outcast. I fell in love with Elizabeth Gledhill, a childhood acquaintance, and we were married on July 17, 1853, when I was 19. We were an active little family in the church. We had 5 children born to us, but 3 died within their first year of life. We decided to immigrate to Zion, in Utah in 1862. Elizabeth and I took our 3-year-old son James Thomas along with our sick baby Francis William and left for America. We sailed from Liverpool on May 14, 1862. We arrived in New York in July and took a train west. En route our baby Francis died. We had no time to bury him, so we left him in the hands of strangers to be buried. At Florence, Illinois, we took an ox team west, across the plains, arriving in Salt Lake City in September of 1862, after 5 months of hardship. We met Mary Jane Nuttall in Salt Lake City, with whom we were friends in Rockdale, England. In April 1863, Elizabeth and I were sealed for eternity in the endowment house. On that same day I married Mary Jane, age 20, in polygamy with Elizabeth's consent. From Salt Lake City I took Mary Jane and Elizabeth to Spring City in Sanpete County, to the home of my sister Mary and her husband John Schofield. Elizabeth had a baby girl, Elizabeth, and who died at birth. I worked as a sheep herder and at other odd jobs. Elizabeth and I then moved to Moroni in search of a place to live, leaving behind Mary Jane in Spring City. 1 month after we departed, Mary Jane gave birth to your great-grandmother Mary Elizabeth. She was named after both of my wives. George Heber was also born in Spring City to Mary Jane. I settled Elizabeth near Moroni. We dug cellars until our crops could be planted. Mary Jane later joined us. We fought a losing battle against hunger, weather, and Indians for 2 years. Then we moved back to Spring City. The church leaders asked me to go to Goshen and organize a choir. We lived there, in a rented house, for 7 years. I worked in the Tintic mines about 15 miles to the west and ran a small acreage that I rented. And Eliza, Joseph Franklin, and David Albert were born to Mary Jane while living in Goshen. I was offered land in Santaquin in exchange for my church leadership and musical talent. I willingly accepted. We rented a 1.5-story house. The upstairs rooms were reached by way of a ladder from the outside. Mary Jane gave birth to Charles Nuttall, Geneva Lavina, Sylvester, Serena, and Leo Maroney in Santaquin. I was called by Bishop Halliday of the Santaquin ward to organize a choir in Spring Lake. Several times each week I took my 2 wives and children and went to the little village. There I organized a choir and played my violin to teach the children melodies. I was their organist and entertainer at parties. Among the choir members was a lovely girl, Charna Ellen Spainhauer. On December 27, 1877, in accordance with the principle of plural marriage, she became my 3rd wife. I acquired a 22-acre farm at Spring Lake. I moved the family there from Santaquin. Charna's daughters Nanny Ellen, Sarah Jane, and Nora Alice were born there. The children of the 2 wives were cradled in the same crib. In 1884 I sold the home in Spring Lake and bought 120 acres of land at Elsinore in Sanpete County. Only 15 acres could be cultivated because of gumbo clay and greasewood. We built a 3-room log house in Elsinore for Elizabeth. On the 17th of July 1885 I delivered 8 months pregnant Charna's triplets John Thomas, William Henry, and Margaret Ann. They lived long enough for me to bath their tiny bodies. I blessed each one, gave them a name and laid them away. Mary Jane's 10-year-old girl Geneva Lavina died on July 26, 1885 as a result of a fall. In 1887 about 200 were imprisoned in the Utah penitentiary for violation of the anti-polygamy laws. In that same year, September 21, Bertha Louisa was born to Chana in Elsinore. Because of persecution, Chana could no longer remain at home to care for her babies. Those living in polygamy were being persecuted, imprisoned and chased down like wild animals. Even neighbors could not be trusted. The children were questioned by authorities. Chana left her children with Elizabeth, the ever-willing, and with her baby, went from place to place working for church members, wherever she could find protection. In the summer of 1889, I was arrested for unlawful cohabitation, as they termed it. In my heart, I could not desert my wives and children, with whom God had blessed me. I was sentenced in the First District Court of Provo to 3.5 months imprisonment and fined $100. I left prison on January 29. On October 6, 1890, the manifesto had been signed by Wilfred Woodruff and was approved and accepted by General Conference. The persecution of the saints began to abate. In the evening, with supper over, the small children put to bed and my newspaper read, I would gather my older children around my beloved melodeon, take my violin and teach them new songs. My wives and I formed a melodious quartet and were often in demand. In 1893, a daughter, Minnie Amelia, was born to Chana. She lived 2 months, died and was buried at night. In Elsinore, a daughter, Florence Adelia, and Arthur Marion, the first son that Chana had given me, were born. The Elsinore branch was organized and I acted as superintendent of the Sunday school and later as president. My melodeon was loaded into the wagon each week and taken to the schoolhouse, which served as the church. There, with my family of singers and my violin, we performed. I was again happy in my service to my community and my God. In the spring of 1892, I was trampled by a stallion and my shoulder and hip were broken. I was taken to Provo and an operation was performed. After, I wore a built-up shoe and I assisted my left arm with my right hand. My spirit was unchanged, but mellowed. I was still strong in my faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Finding myself unable to handle farm work, I traded some of the property at Elsinore for a little house near the Manti Temple, where I moved Chana's family. Here Eva Eudora, the last of Chana's daughters, was born. I worked in the temple for about 3 years. While traveling in Goshen, I developed a bad cold, which turned into pneumonia. I died December 14, 1901. I am buried in the Santaquin Cemetery with my 3 wives. Merlin Neal, the last boy of Chana's, was born 1 month later on January 18. He became my 31st child. Elizabeth and I had 6 children. Mary Jane and I had 11 and Chana had 14. Thank you for listening. May God bless you.